Hello and welcome to the Robbies Podcast, your destination for in-depth discussion and analysis of the Premier League and the Champions League. I'm Robbie Mustoe, he's Robbie Earl, and here are the topics as we break down week 30 in this season's Premier League. Arsenal and Liverpool play out an absolute thriller, drawing 2-2. Manchester City eased past Southampton, winning 4-1. Erling Haaland scoring 2 goals, taking him to 30 in the Premier League this season. Spurs beat Brighton 2-1. Both managers see red in a tense and controversial match. Manchester United beat Everton 2-0, but lose Marcus Rashford to an injury. Newcastle come from behind to beat Brentford 2-1 to remain third in the league, and Frank Lampard can't find a win in his first match back as Chelsea manager. That's what we've got coming up in today's episode.
All right, my friend, you got a weekend off, a weekend to sit on the sofa and enjoy all that's Premier League. I mean, from an early kickoff to a crazy 10 o'clock window yesterday, you know, City doing the business at Southampton, and then today two really pulsating games, Leeds hosting Crystal Palace. But we have to start, mate, at Anfield. It was the big game of the weekend, the high-stakes game in some respect of the weekend for Arsenal. End up drawing the game 2-2. I suppose the overriding question, and the question that was posed to Mikel Arteta, do you see that as a point gained or 2 dropped, Rob? Where were you on that, and what was your bigger picture from a game that had a bit of everything, you know, good, bad, and some ugly that we'll talk about maybe after we've talked about the football?
Yeah, I think overriding, Rob, it ended up being a good point for Arsenal. Yeah. And if everybody's really honest about it, they were a little lucky to get the point. I mean, with Liverpool's comeback, with that atmosphere, with the way that they played in the second half, they missed penalties. I'm making notes of all chances that go through the game, Rob, but I'm like writing Liverpool chances all the way through second half. And yes, I know Arsenal have got a very special goalkeeper in Aaron Ramsdale. But with the chances and the saves and the penalty miss, Arsenal will get back on that bus or on that plane and think, God, that was an incredible game of football, and we will absolutely take the point. Did you see it the same, Rob, or did you feel like with 2-0 up that they'll be disappointed?
No, I didn't, and Bex asked us both, and Tim was probably a bit more down the disappointed route, and we heard from Mikel Arteta after. And I think, so, you know, 1 or 2 were sensing maybe that he's putting on a braver face. But I'm with you, Rob. I think it's one of those days when you take the positives, you take what could have been. Of course, from 2-0 up, you'd want to win the game, but from 2-0 up against Liverpool, who get a goal just before half-time, the game's very different. The fans got involved. We talk about the incident with Xhaka that I thought was a little foolish, that ignited the atmosphere, and then Liverpool played at a better intensity because of that. But you're right. Let's, you know, X's and O's and ones and twos. Liverpool had far more chances second half to go on and win the game, apart from the goalkeeper save and a penalty missed by Mo Salah. They had 1 or 2 opportunities that they probably should have finished better. And Arsenal were... Listen, they had to dig deep, Rob. I thought there was a bit of tiredness in 1 or 2 of the players, of fatigue. I don't know if that's tension, Rob, maybe. Sometimes, you know, in a big game and you get sort of really up for it, it does take away a bit of your energy, that nervous energy. So... yeah, I think it's a positive one. And I also said, Rob, just in closing on this, that I thought Mikel Arteta did a good job after the game, because Bex was sort of saying, well, you know, how will City feel? Is this, a bit of a feather in their cap that they've dropped the points and now it's only a 6-point gap? And I didn't feel that way, but I also felt it's important for Arteta to say, we're still in good shape. We're 6 points clear. We've just drawn at Anfield, where Manchester United just got beat 7-0, and you know, we're still the team to beat. We're still top of the table. And he was very positive. And I actually liked it, that he was positive, that he wasn't going down the road of, I've got tired bodies, we hung on there, we've got a point. Because I don't think it was like that.
Yeah, listen, you watched, you know, this Premier League season unravel, and you see the form of City right now, and you kind of expect almost, if you're an Arsenal fan, that you've got to go and win every game. And Liverpool away, when they showed those flashes, and we'll get into that, and I'm sure Liverpool fans are a little frustrated that first 45 minutes, they just haven't seen that. They haven't seen that enough times, and that's why they're struggling to make the top four. So, of course, in moments, in times, and it comes down to emotions, Rob. And I'll go right back to the start of the game. On our coverage and our broadcast and stuff, Rob, I think we do a pretty good job of when stuff we want to show stuff and not go to commercial break. We try and do it. Yeah. And the You'll Never Walk Alone at the beginning of the game. I mean, it's always a little emotional, and it's whoever you support. Surely you got to like. There's a little bit of wow to that. And I thought today we showed it all. We had great camera angles of the players' faces with the singing of the anthem going on in the background. I just thought it was shaping up to be a brilliant game of football. And the first half, mate, I tweeted out. I mean, maybe it was a flipping, kiss of death a little bit for Arsenal. But I think around about 35, 40 minutes, I'm tweeting, this is stunning from Arsenal. Yeah. To go there with the atmosphere, to quieten them down, to score 2 goals, for Gabriel Martinelli to look like an absolute $1 million. Goals coming down that side again. He got the better of Trent Alexander-Arnold a couple of times. Trent came back in the second half and with a brilliant assist. So, at that point, Rob, and we'll get on to your moment, which I think is a very valid point, I'm thinking, this Arsenal team, look at this. And I know that I think you made the comment, or maybe Lee Dixon, about they'll be nervous as anything going into this game. Yeah. But they didn't show it in that first half an hour. And some of that football, it's so familiar now, and it's so set. They're automatic. I think I made a note, like Arsenal's football is automatic, and it helps them in days where there's a big atmosphere or there's a big pressure on it. They just kind of go into auto mode with Zinchenko midfield and Martinelli and how they do things. And I thought they were brilliant, Rob. But yeah, we'll go back to your insight. I know you made a comment on the show, Rob, that what you thought maybe started the change in the momentum of the game.
Yeah, well, I just thought as the game started, I completely agree in terms of Arsenal. It was stunning at times. It was like, wow, they're doing this to Liverpool at Anfield. And then there was a situation, Rob, where Granit Xhaka, who's been exemplary this season, can't speak highly enough on in terms of his football, in terms of his leadership, in terms of his control and his emotions. He got caught up with a challenge. It might have been Fabinho Canute, and then he ended up with him and Trent Alexander-Arnold went together, and there was a bit of push and shove, and a little bit of not heads quite butting, but heads being forward, and the referee ended up coming in eventually. Both players got yellow, but it riled the crowd up, and there was a 5-minute spell after that, Rob, where tackles were flying in from both sides, but Liverpool were ignited. The Liverpool fans at Anfield got up, got into the game, and all of a sudden, from that point on, Rob, there was a different intensity to Liverpool's play. And I remember I was reading articles last night about the game, and you get a bit excited, even we're just watching the game and reporting on the game. But I read an interesting article about Mikel Arteta saying that he's had to learn, and it's his first rodeo of being in charge of it. And he said last season he had words with Klopp at Anfield, and they had a bit of a fallout. And a similar thing happened, and it got the crowd going, and Liverpool won 4-0, I believe. And he sort of said, I can't allow that to happen again. And it was almost a bit of a carbon copy situation with Granit Xhaka. Now, I'm not saying that was the reason it ended up 2-2, or that's the reason, but it was something I thought that let Arsenal down and made the challenge in the task bigger, because the fans got involved, because they were pretty quiet in that first 35 minutes when Arsenal were dominating the ball. The fans got involved, and it changed the intensity and the speed of the game.
And it's funny, Rob, right? And we've kind of hinted at this before about Liverpool and why, I get asked every day almost what's happened to Liverpool, why they're not quite the same. And isn't it amazing the power of emotions, basically? Like just that extra, and I've said it before, Rob, about like in any team or in any game, there's a little bit more that you can give, and Liverpool haven't found it enough. You find it when you're going on a great run, or I've said it before, when you feel like something's happening, you're top of the league table, or you're in the latter stages of a cup competition, you find that extra. Well, today Liverpool found that extra 15-20%, because it felt like that much, maybe more, in terms of just from the emotion, nothing from what the manager said, maybe a little bit what you're saying there in that collision, Rob, that sparks the fans, which sparks the players, but that energy that Liverpool, particularly at Anfield, and I know that maybe some fans that aren't Liverpool fans get fed up of the, Anfield's a special place type of thing, but I'm sure all crowds have the ability to motivate their team to another level, but we saw it today, and I go back to, gosh, when Liverpool are playing like that in the second half, it's because their engine's at full revs, like they're full steam ahead, and when they're not quite there, then we've seen the results this year and what it means, and then teams get a little bit of space and they get their head up and they stick balls in behind, and it changes everything. Liverpool wants that second half all the way through. In previous seasons, he's built a team to be able to do that for a couple of reasons, and we know the midfield is kind of lacking a little bit at the moment. It hasn't been there, but when it's there, they got attacking players, they got energy, they got quality. You know, there's some of I mean, they created like 5 or 6, 7 chances, Rob, in the game. Just through that. And Arsenal, Rob, to swing back to them, you know, with about 20 minutes to go, I'm thinking this is... Again, listen, we haven't been lucky enough to win the Premier League title, but you sort of think, well, this is it right now, Arsenal. You've done your silky football. Yeah. You've shown us how great you are. You've come back from difficult situations, but at Anfield, you're winning this game. It's 2-1, and you're absolutely backs against the wall, and you're hanging on. Basically, they're hanging on. Yeah. And it's like, well, go on then. You want to be champions. Win in a different way, and this is a way different way. It's a scrappy way. It's a way that we used to win games, Rob, in the Premier League when you're playing against the big boys. Yeah. You have to scrap. You have to take all that you can get, and they almost did it. Just before I throw it back to you, Rob, I know Rob Holding's done a good job. Would it have been a little different if William Saliba have played? He hasn't caught that many headlines about his back injury, and all teams have injuries, and Rob Holding's done okay. I think the longer time goes on, that little bit of gap in quality in that middle of defence, I think makes a difference, and I think it may have made a difference in today's game.
I think you're right. His athleticism, his composure's probably better understanding of defensive situations. Listen, Rob Holding's done a good job holding, if you excuse the pun, and he's fitted in there, and you know, hasn't. But it was interesting because there's also, Rob, games coming up, and you're thinking about away at Newcastle and away at Manchester City. Have got quality forwards that you'd like to have Saliba and Gabriel as your back two. Yeah. Interesting one, Rob, and again, I'll be interested in your view. I won't even give you my opinion before I ask the question, but there was a few people sort of questioning a few of Mikel Arteta's substitutes. Now, that always happens, and listen, he's made substitutes that have changed the game and won games. Yeah. Today, people were saying, like, he takes Odegaard off, he puts on, goes 3 at the back, is he kind of drawing them on rather than going the other way? Is that the way to get the game? Listen, I wasn't particularly having it, I'll tell you now. I just think it's easy to make those kind of conclusions after, the scoreline. But anything in that for you?
No. I mean, the only thing was I can't think of his name now, the new Polish centre-back that came in to make it back 3.
Kivor. Yeah.
Kivor. Yeah. He came in, and it's such a... I mean, I'm not sure how many minutes he's played in the Premier League, Rob. I think he's played in the Europa or whatever, but we watch almost every game, and he might have come in a couple of times, I don't know. Yeah. But it's a flipping... It's a some game to come in and try and... he got caught out early on. I think Robbie got somebody who went round him early on. Yeah. I don't know. I think at this point, you got to be you got to be a harsh critic if you're going to have a go for Mikel Arteta, the way that he's managed and he's made changes. I mean, for the most part, wow. And he said afterwards, Rob, because I think he was asked a question. It's like, well, I do what I can to try and help the team. Yeah. And I think at that point, when they're literally hanging on, they're hanging on. I mean,
there was a few tired legs,
Rob, some of the saves that he made. Yeah, it was tight. It's hard, isn't it? With the way Liverpool play like that, and I know when you look at Liverpool, where they are on the table, I guess you don't think they're capable of that, but they are. They are capable of that. And when Trent gets on the front foot, again, I could pick him apart for some of the goals. Martinelli creates one, scores one. It's his kind of guy. Whether he's close enough at certain times. He got caught over the top, I thought, for the second goal. But then he comes forward, Robin, makes a brilliant ball in for Firmino's equalising hit at the back post. So it was current Liverpool first half. It was vintage Liverpool second half, and that's just the way it was. And Arsenal were brilliant first half and had to scrap and fight, and they couldn't find a way. But it goes back to the start of our chat, Rob, and it's like Arsenal that you got. It was a little lucky given the penalty miss and everything else. But listen, maybe they've earned that luck, Rob, over the season, the way they've played. They've earned a little bit of luck, and all champions need a little bit of luck. But what a game. What an incredible game of football, I tell you. I mean, it's
sometimes you're exhausted watching, Rob, because you've got so
League.
many themes going on. We're talking with our tape room to have a look at this, and then this happens, and this. Honestly, one of them days you were panting. Listen, Rob, I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. The ugly, that's a story that's coming out, and we'll certainly learn more tomorrow. And the PGMOL, the Professional Referees Association, are going to come out with a statement base. And I think we got the pictures out today, and it's starting to catch fire on social media. But there was an incident, Rob, at half-time where the assistant referee, we know him as a linesman, walked towards the centre of the pitch to meet the referee, and then they walk off together. Now, during that time as he's walking towards the centre of the pitch, there's definitely some communication between Andrew Robertson and the linesman. And these pictures, Rob, and video of the linesman almost raising his elbow in the face of Andrew Robertson. Now, you can see from Robertson's reaction, he's not happy. A few of his fellow teammates have to pull him back. There's a little bit of scuffle. The referee sees something, pulls out a yellow card, gives Robertson a yellow card, we believe, for dissent. Now, whether it was what he'd said after the event. But it's out there, Rob. The PGMOL are coming out with a statement tomorrow. They're going to have a thorough investigation. My sense of what I saw and how it happened, and we sort of saw something during the game because it was on the near side, and we got a couple of pictures. I don't think we'll ever see this assistant referee stroke linesman again in English football.
Yeah, I think you're probably going to be right, Rob. And I just, just really honestly, I saw it, and it was definitely a raised elbow to the face of Robinson, which is unacceptable. I get that. Sometimes in something like that, instincts. It wasn't as though he threw a massive elbow and knocked him over. It was an instinctual kind of raising to the chin. You can't do that. I'd like to see him be suspended, not necessarily be fired from his position. That's just me. But take him to the Championship for a few games or to the end of the season. I'm just a bit of a believer, Rob, that we all make mistakes a little bit, and that's a massive mistake in a huge game, and it's absolutely unacceptable, of course. But I wouldn't want to see a good official that's trusted to go and be a part of that officiating team in that game just to be cast aside for one mistake. So, there's no question. Right? The PGMOL are gonna have to say, under no circumstances can you ever raise your arm or hand or anything striking as an actual player. I mean, it is a shocker. But I just
especially as we've just come off
fall out of the game.
The Mitrovic situation, Rob, where an eight game ban, a player putting his hands on a referee. It's going to work both ways, and fans come onto the pitch and do with players. So it was an ugly. It's not a good look for the Premier League. It's not been a great weekend for the PGMOL and VAR and all that stuff as well. Howard Webb, no doubt, will deal with it, and we'll have to see what's the fallout from there. But let's not take away from what was a brilliant game of football at Anfield, though. I mean, that's the Premier League right at its very best, mate. Right at its very best. An 8th place team with not much to play for.
Yeah. No, just before we move on, I want to make sure I get your sense of, we can move on from this game, but I got to, how does it feel now? How do you feel about Arsenal, the title race? How does today affect
feel an
that,
awful
if at all?
lot more different in that. Yes, of course they wanted to win. They didn't. So, Man City may feel, and those who think will feel that City have a better chance. I don't think it changes too much for me, Rob, in that, listen, Arsenal aren't going to win every game from now to the end of the season. If they're not going to win, make sure they draw. And they still have to go to City and really not get beat. If they could go to City and draw, then they're in pole position. I mean, as it stands, I think Peter Drury said at the end of the broadcast today, if City beat Arsenal and win the game in hand, they're level points going into everything. We could be one of those, all the way through the season. So lots of if and buts, lots of things to happen. We've got Man City, who've possibly got Bayern Munich and Real Madrid or Chelsea to get to a Champions League final still to come between now and the end of the season. So there's plenty on everybody's plate. There's still a few twists and turns, but not as disappointed maybe, and listen, I'm a neutral, Arsenal fans may have a different view, but not too disappointed in a point at Anfield, Rob, in the game that everyone was saying was, there's been periods through the season, everyone said with Arsenal, oh, this is the one we'll find out. Oh, they ended up with a point, they've not got beat, and they're still top of the table by 6 points.
Yeah, I agree, mate. I happen to agree. I mean, still got 6 points ahead. They've played a game more, but there's quite a few ifs in there, and Arsenal going into City knowing that they're okay with a draw.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, it's so hard to predict stuff and how that game might go. But yeah, I think we're going to see a super tight finish, Rob, which is great for the Premier League, great for us. But what a game! What a game it was! I thoroughly enjoyed it. I almost wished I wished I was in the studio with you, with the team and with the group. We could all be in there just to throw it around. It's a peacock game. We had a little bit more time. Yeah. You did a brilliant job at half time, showing different things and different highlights and different. It's just it was a thrill, mate, to watch it. It was great stuff.
Absolutely. Let's take it to the other team in the race, Manchester City. Everybody looking at them and just hitting that bit of form in the time that we timely fashion that they do as they go on to title wins, Rob. Erling Haaland back in the team was the headline. Obviously missing last week, although they scored 4 last weekend. But this time they managed to get 4. Haaland gets himself 2 goals. That's 30 Premier League goals, Rob, in total. 44, I think, in all competitions now. Jack Grealish continues to show some of his best form in the blue of City. And City just march on, Rob. 4-1, 2 goals to Haaland, top scorer, 30 Premier League goals. Jack Grealish back goals, back to assists. Sort of sums up everything you need to know in that game.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much got my notes, Rob. They're absolutely in their best form of the season, no question. We've seen it many, many times before. There's times earlier in the season where you think, oh, can they find that again? Well, they found it again. Yeah. I think the headline, certainly Erling Haaland's free kick, the overhead kick was stunning. And it's like almost every time he flipping shoots a goal, the ball goes into the back of the net. The production now from Jack Grealish is another story, another continuation, his development. He looks much more comfortable, Rob, I think, in a City shirt, and maybe he wanders off his line a little bit. I know Pep doesn't like him to do that. I feel like he's more effective when he's able to do that because I think he's tied in a wide position. We talked about it, Rob, so many times when he receives the ball, he's got 1 or 2 defenders. He's not really a pacey dribbling type. He wants to come inside and link, and when he plays a little more inside, he has the ability to link in both directions. So I think he looks happy, comfortable. He's enjoying running back. There's a couple of times, Rob, that I watched him where he had a long run back to help defensively, like he did a couple of weeks ago, but wasn't involved in the play. But I noticed it. Like, look at that. He's running back again. So love that. I mean, love that for the team and stuff. So he's becoming a story. Looks like he's becoming the player that Pep always thought he could do. Haaland's Haaland. I mean, it's he's probably not going to get. I mean, he's going to break the record, but in terms of Premier League goals in a season, but because of his little injuries and different, he's had a few games off and stuff. I don't think we're going to get a crazy big number that we might have expected. It's still going to be an amazing number. And De Bruyne's the other one, Rob, and De Bruyne's back at. Not that I think he's ever got too far away from it. His manager has, but assists and crosses, cross to Haaland, and Haaland's movement again, Rob. I don't know whether you did a little movement on it. He was at the near post. He quickly realises that, this isn't the best chance for me to score. I'm going to recycle. I'm going to run right to the back post. And he scores from there. So it was, and again, I'll say it again, Rob, about the back 4 for Man City is what's different, right? Yeah. Of course, we got the big man up front scoring the goals in terms of the league, but probably more importantly, the Champions League. But what else is different is the back 4. Yeah. And I don't think, Rob, they've looked back since they've played that back 4 together with John Stones popping into midfield like Rico Lewis did and like Cancelo did before that. But what I like about it, I said before, Rob, is that they're 4 defenders. They're centre backs. They've got defence first is in their mentality, and I got to think that's different. That's going to help them in the Champions League on turnovers and trying to stop the counter-attacking goals more than a Cancelo in the side or a couple of others that have played that. Another footballer. They're out and out defenders, 4 of them, and you add Rodri to that. That's 5 players that really are employed for the most part, to keep goals out the net, and then you've got everything else that going forward that they do great. So that's the reason to be optimistic, I feel, for City fans going forward in the Champions League particularly. But the way they're playing right now, I mean, just to swing it back to Southampton, Rob, I mean, they were great opponents for Man City. I mean, I'm not sure there's many teams. Maybe let me throw it to you, Rob, on this one, right? I feel like the modern-day manager in the Premier League of not the best, not the biggest teams, but of the others.
Yeah.
There's more teams now, and I saw this when I covered the La Liga in Spain for many, many seasons, that they're just going to play their way. And whatever happens, happens. And that's what I felt like Ruben Celis in this game was, let's go open. Let's go toe-to-toe with Man City. Let's play open. Let's press them. Let's try and play. Let's be expansive. Let's try and play out and throw everybody wide. Yeah. I'm like, wow, okay. And that might be the philosophy of these modern managers, Rob.
It? Maybe 20, 25 minutes, you can be in the game, and if you get a couple of chances, you've got to take them. Because if you don't, you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. And so it was open. So in the second half, when I know the weaker teams tire a little bit, Man City came alive and smashed them, put them away. And I don't know, but at Southampton, I just can't see it. I can't see.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I've seen some huff and puff.
Yeah.
But I don't see it, Rob, from them getting out of it. Do you?
I don't know. I thought he'd done a good job. I thought he looked like he's brought a bit of something. They're better, Rob. There is improvement to a certain degree, but when they get towards the last third, there's still not enough threat. There's still not enough sort of runs in behind that you think is going to turn into goals and quality. So it's going to be tough, but listen, that bottom changes week by week, Rob, and as we'll get to, Crystal Palace can show you put back-to-back wins together, and all of a sudden life can look very different. Just before we move on, mate, I want to get your thought on something that broke this week, and you've just mentioned John Stones was my underappreciated from the week, I think a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about his role in midfield. And yesterday we see the defensive side of Stones, but also his ability to make good decisions on the ball and his passing, and at times he gets up. He was almost getting into a sort of left midfield position and supporting the ball, but not so much about Stones. But did you see some of the criticism of Kyle Walker by Pep this week, and talked basically about he's really quick, he'd be the quickest guy when he's 60 years of age in this room, but basically saying he doesn't have the technical or probably tactical ability to play in my side in that position. And some of the words that came out, again, whether it was a language, whether it was an interpretation or not, was quite harsh, basically saying, Kyle Walker's really quick and he's a good defender and I need to stick him on someone, but when I'm playing this style, he doesn't fit. Now, two things. One, is that just him being honest, brave and putting it out there? Or is that a message to Kyle Walker? Or is that also a message to the group? Because he does poke Pep, doesn't he? We've seen it with KDB. We've seen it with Grealish. We've seen it with Foden. Is this Walker's little poke, do you think, just before we get into the real business end of the season?
Good point. Good question, Rob. And I actually did hear it now when you said what it was. I think a couple of things. I think the way that he wants him to play, I agree with Pep. He's not a right back to centre midfield, is he? I think,
not really.
I think that's what he meant by that.
Don't get the best of him now.
No, and he's a little, his decision making, which people, that watch football, Rob, and stuff. I still don't think that the average, God, I mean, like a player has to make thousands of decisions out there in quick moments, and I don't think that the general football fan understands how hard it is in that midfield area, particularly when you've got players literally all around you that are very, very quick, that read the game, that want to win the ball back, that want to press, it's really hard to make those good decisions because you're so vulnerable in that middle of midfield. If you make bad decisions, you give the ball away. I used to have a coach tell, because I used to play that position, like a coach would say, well, don't get sacked on it like a quarterback. Don't get sacked. Don't get somebody to take the ball off you because then we're absolutely knackered. And so it's an important position. So I understand Pep's talking about Kyle that way. In terms of it being a tactical poke, I don't think so, Rob. The only thing I think maybe the Kyle Walker off the field stuff, he's been a bit unprofessional, let's say that, in recent months. Maybe he's on the bad side of Pep and Pep's going to, give him a bit of public criticism when he can. So maybe that. But I don't think, do you think then it's just a because he's going to get back in the side and he needs him to be at it like we saw.
I just wondered if against Bayern he may feel that he there's a man marking job, a more defensive job, and whether he's going to play him and make sure he's on his toes or so. I wasn't sure in all honesty. It's hard to read Pep, but it was just an interesting one, and the sort of depth and strength that he went with the comments. I thought this is aimed at somebody or for something. We'll wait and see how that plays out. We're going to move it on to.
Okay. Yeah.
Not so much an interesting game, as interesting as the game was. Tottenham winning 2-1 against Brighton, Musty. But touchline tussles, I'll say, between Zerbi and Stellini, two Italian coaches. Stellini's in caretaker till the end of the season because of Conte leaving. Zerbi's been a breath of fresh air, possibly in for manager of the year with what he's done at Brighton, what he's turned them into. We'll talk about the game in a little bit, Rob, but this was sort of dominated by a running kind of monologue between the two managers. It started from the handshakes, it continued through the game, that got to a point where the referee ends up giving both managers red cards. I believe Stellini was more for the actions of his staff, not necessarily him, but he's a guy in charge of him, so his was red. De Zerbi's was for the descent and the going into the technical area, etc., etc.
Right.
What I've read, I mean, I was intrigued by what had got under De Zerbi's skin so much. Again, I mean, there's a few things out there. One that I read that seemed to have a bit of legs is that Stellini apparently has given all the praise of Brighton's form to Graham Potter and what he did before, and not giving De Zerbi any credit. And De Zerbi's taken a hump about that and come for him. Whether that's true or not, but somebody said that this has come out from sources in Italy. That's what started it off. I mean, who knows? Unprofessional, Robert. I thought it was a side story that didn't need to go on. And as much as I love De Zerbi and whatever, that's his second red card this season, Rob. We know he's fiery. We know he wants to play a certain way. His football's been excellent, but might he just have to keep that in check a little bit, Rob? Might that just affect him and his team if he's not careful?
If he's not careful, Rob, and I think it's a great start off really actually this game actually, because I noticed it right off the start, Rob. There was times when he was in the face of Stellini, real nasty pointing stuff, as if something had gone on in the past. But back to your question, come on, you can't let that sort of stuff take away from what a great manager you are and what a great job you're doing, because it can. And it can. And I'd hate to see, you know what I feel about Roberto De Zerbi? I'd hate to think that that's going to be something about his personality or his manager style that's just not. I mean, listen, we love emotion from managers, but I think he is guilty of being a bit. He's a bit. I don't know. I feel like he's like I know he's not a little guy, but he's like an aggressive little chap that wants to. He's at Brighton, but he wants full respect, and which is good for him and his club. But at the end of the day, he's there to manage his team. He's there to be the best manager he can be to his side, to make them play better, which he's done amazing amount of times. Stellini, they kept going. I thought they both got red cards, Rob, because they didn't control. I think the commentator said it in the game. They didn't control their staff. And I think there was one time when everybody's going off and the two managers were sat there like that, like with their hands looking and said, well, get on with it. And I think that was that what came through the commentators was like, nah, they've been red carded because they haven't controlled their staff. So it was an ugly part of the game for sure. You'd think with coming from the same country, they'd have a bit of respect for each other and there'd be a little bit of respect between them. But I got to go on to the game, Rob, because of the 10 o'clock window of matches in the Premier League this Saturday. I just fancied watching this one, and so I took a close look at it. Okay. And I tell you what, I have no idea how Tottenham won. I mean, there was so many things that went against Brighton in an awful way, and I do believe already that Pedro Amal has apologised for miscausing this game. There's a. It was Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, wasn't it, that trod on the foot of Mitoma. Mitoma had a goal disallowed when the ball looked like, and this is great for the YouTube viewers,
sleeve, wasn't it?
It looked like it was pretty high on his arm. He scores, disallowed. There was a deflected goal that came off of the arm of somebody, I suppose, with a letter of the law.
Yeah, the McAllister one,
McAllister. There was and you looked at all aspects of the game. Brighton dominated everything. Dominated possession. dominated chances. Their XG was higher. The bad decisions, they got affected more by that. And of course, Harry Kane steps up and heads the ball in. Was it a header?
No, he smashed it in, didn't he? Come on, a slight deflection. It got rolled back to him and he's hit it with his right foot. Slight deflection off the defender, back of the net.
Yeah. He finished it lovely.
Yeah,
he finished that one lovely.
Yeah.
And they win the game.
Yeah.
So it was a. I mean, listen, a win's a win, and you'll take anything. But on another day, Brighton aren't losing that game, and the decisions and stuff. I mean, they had two real bad ones actually, and I feel bad for them because that's a tough loss to take when they played so well, Rob. And you know, when I watched them, they got so many good technical players, from Gross in midfield to Solly March to about McAllister, Caicedo. They're a really talented group of players that are obviously doing well under the new manager, Zerbi. But it was some game, mate. And I tell you, Spurs, like, wow, how did you come out with that with a victory? But they did, and it keeps them in touch with the top four.
Absolutely. From Brighton's point of view, Rob, European football of some calibre would be the goal, wouldn't it? Be the dream? Conference League, Europa League.
Yeah, and I think they'll get it. Well, they're 7th now in the league table. Every summer, like, it's a bit like what Leicester used to be, Rob. You know, I'm sure this summer they're bracing themselves for the offers of some of the players. They've got some very high level Premier League players in that squad, apart of course from the manager Roberto De Zerbi, that's going to be possibly in demand from Premier League, if not certainly Serie A. So that'll be the concern going into the summer. But as I know, the CEO at the football club, and there's contingency, there's concession planning for every major player, staff member. They've got backups that are ready, well, not ready to come in, but they've got targets to come in. So it's a brilliantly ran club, and I love watching them. I love watching them play right now because I love a team, particularly a team like Brighton, Rob, that have that philosophy. And I would suspect that a lot of those Spurs fans in that stadium are thinking, They're kind of playing, that kind of what we want to play like that. They look like the home team, Rob. They were that silky and that good, but they lost the game. It's amazing.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what the consequences of that red card are for De Zerbi, because they have got, Rob, in 2 weeks an FA Cup semi-final at Wembley against Manchester United. And so, you know, let's hopefully that he is on the touchline and Brighton can give their best and give United a go. Talking of United, let's move to Old Trafford. They're facing Sean Dyche's Everton team that we know are well organised, are more difficult to beat and to play against. It was a Everton team that had no Decore because of his red card, so he had to jig things about. He got Ellis Sims back in the team at the top of the pitch, and Damari Gray played a little bit underneath him into midfield. It was, in the end, a good win for United. McTominay with the first goal, Rob, obviously scoring goals internationally and made a nice run, lovely sharp finish to get the goal. Anthony Martial comes on and gets a goal, and he could be important in this run-in now with the amount of games that United got. You know, in my prep for the game, Rob, I was just looking at United this month, have 9 games in the month of April. Across 3 competitions. Wow. It's an incredible amount of games. Fortunately, they got a few people coming back. Eriksen was back in the squad. You know, Casemiro's last of his band, so there is 1 or 2 people coming back. But I suppose the big news outside of United winning and getting the 3 points that at the time got them, I think, 3rd place in the league as they won. I think the big news was the injury to Marcus Rashford, who played over the top, was running for a ball, pulled up sharply, straight to the medical people saying he wasn't right, held off. We saw him limping towards the dressing room, and no sort of full reports come out as yet. But Ten Hag, I saw in his press conference, said things don't look that good at the moment, which doesn't sound great for Rashford, doesn't sound great for Ten Hag and Manchester United.
Well, also Ten Hag, didn't he have a go at the Premier League, Rob, doesn't he, for the amount of games? I mean, it's just English football, isn't it? It just is. Like, if you're successful in these different competitions, then you play a lot of games, and it's the way it is. I mean, we know that Rashford put out the England squad for international break, so, you know, he had a few days off. We know he came into New York City and enjoyed himself for a few days off, and deserved that, the amount of games that he's played. But maybe it wasn't enough. You know, maybe it wasn't enough to take that break. It's always a concern when you see a player stop and he's holding the inside of his thigh in the groin area. Again, we don't know what the details of the injury is. or are. But yeah, it's got to be a worry given the season he's had and given how sharp he's looked and how threatening he's looked. So that was the bad side of it, Rob. I did just want to quickly talk about the way that they play Man United, because again, I find it really interesting. They are, and I'll summarise it as this, Rob, that when they play teams that concede possession to Manchester United, Man United are in their absolute sweet spot. They're in their sweet spot. They love it. They love the ball. They love teams to drop off, because they play with this brilliant width on both sides. They play now with a midfield fluidity that's pretty remarkable, really. I mean, whoever's playing alongside, it was Bruno Fernandes, Rob, was playing as a holding six in this game, which I thought, wow, like, surely he's more... But he's doing the Eriksen thing. Now, Eriksen's nearly back, but Eriksen came into the Man United side when they were stodgy and they couldn't play, and he made them play. Bruno makes them play. His passing range is brilliant. And then you had Sabitzer playing as a number 10. And McTominay, alongside Bruno, that's given license to get forward. So at times, you got Sancho, Anthony, you got fullbacks, you got the midfield players, and you've just got one player, and it was Bruno holding. I really, really enjoy Erik ten Hag's philosophy against teams that are a little weaker, because he stretches them, he massively stretches them, and they find ways to get through and score goals, create chances. Not always score goals, but they create a lot of chances. The problem comes, I think, for Man United when they play against good sides, they're also good on the ball, and then you get this super stretch game end to end, and they're vulnerable to conceding goals, as we've seen, Rob, in recent matches where they get pulled apart, they get battered a little bit, and then we moan about Rashford and Anthony not come back to help out. It's like you know, the famous thing that coaches always say about the teams: we want to attack together, we want to defend together. Well, I'll tell you what Man United do, Rob. They attack together. They don't, for the most part, defend together. So when they don't have the ball, the attackers kind of switch off a little bit, and the defenders like, get on with it, guys. You know, you can handle that. And I think we know now that champions, if you're going to be champion, you've got to be both. You got to defend together as well, which is something they can improve. But this is I just enjoyed this game for Man United, Rob, because I see a team that pulled Everton apart. They're lovely and expansive. They do play in a style that United fans are going to really enjoy and are enjoying. And a few tweaks and a few additions and a few, you know, they're going to be challenging at the very top. But I just wanted to drop that, just the way it's different. Bruno playing as a 6 is different. There's not many managers around that would do that, but it works because of his brilliant passing range and the way that their philosophy is. We're just going to play, and who cares if we're not that strong, solid, organised in the middle of the park, because we can play great football.
And as I was looking through the teams, Rob, and I think it was one of my teams I was looking at for the weekend, I was just thinking, like, with the amount of tournaments, the amount of competition, the amount of games that they're in, we might see change of personnel. I'm not sure whether we'll see too much change of system, though, but as you say, Weghorst can play in a few positions. Zabitzer playing in a 10, which we've been new. You know, Bruno playing it as a 6, and if he's got the ball, dominating the ball as he can do. One area where I'm still in, and I said I think at half-time to Bex, one area that still needs improving for me, and I think you've touched on, you know, wide players now in progressive teams. Sancho and Anthony's, Rob, production is still not where it should be. When you see Saka and Martinelli today, when you see, you know, Grealish and Mahrez and players, bigger threat, more
Salah,
goals,
Mane
more assists and all that stuff. Yeah, you see the Brighton players, and you're seeing, you know, whether Rashford's there or sometimes plays centrally, and obviously if he's out for a while, they don't even have him at all. More goals have got to come. Anthony and Sancho have got to become more goal hungry, get into better positions when the ball's on the opposite side, hit the far post. Just don't feel that's something that United can rely on as a goal source when others can, and that maybe is a bit of a difference.
You know what? It's an interesting point, Rob, because I immediately think of the way that Erik ten Hag plays, Rob. I think those wide players are very wide a lot.
Yeah, stay out. Yeah,
they're there for the width, and they're more. I feel like they're a bit more old school, creative type of wide players, more than the new school of the 4-3-3s and the scoring wingers. Basically, I totally agree. You know, and I think these days, particularly Man United right now, they haven't got very few strikers, that they need more goals in those areas. But it might be difficult given the way that he wants them. And I just give him praise for the great width they play with.
Yeah.
you can't be always available in the wide positions and also be in the centre of the box like Mo Salah is. I mean, when you see Mo Salah out wide, like not as much as a normal wide player. Systems are a little bit different, but it's interesting. No, and maybe more goals from the middle of the park. And just a quick mention on Scott McTominay, Rob. And he was. We've probably had him before for underappreciated, and I think there's times I watch him play, and I think he's really effective in different ways, in all ways. Maybe the best way that he plays is actually getting forward and scoring goals. We saw it for Scotland, and he gets forward again. He makes a little run and scores. I mean, I think he is a little underappreciated, and Erik ten Hag likes him. I just wanted to give him a little mention because, again, like he's, I don't know, I just think he's an important player for Manchester United that pops up with the odd goal, that's plenty of runs into the penalty box, and maybe from those players that the manager might want more goals, maybe as much as the wide players too.
Yeah. Didn't he win Player of the Year or something with Jose Mourinho, give him a special award or something when Mourinho went to the football club? Back in the day. So, if Jose likes you, that must be a good thing.
But it's good. A
good result. Let's take it to the community stadium. Brentford 1, Newcastle 2. Brentford went ahead. We had a first in this game, Rob, an Ivan Toney penalty miss in the Premier League. Well, penalty saved, actually. Nick Pope went to his left, made a save, and then Toney got the second chance to do it with another penalty kick. Isak caught Rico Henry in the head, dangerous play, got the foul, the penalty was given. Toney steps up, same side, goes with a bit of height, finds the back of the net, gets his 18th Premier League goal of the season. Brentford are 1-0 up. You're thinking, difficult. Newcastle hadn't particularly started the game well, and you're wondering after that great run they're in. I think it was 4 straight wins before the game. But they find a way back, mate. Joe Ellington gets to the byline, pulls the ball back. The goalkeeper ends up trying to kick it away and kicks it into his own goal. And then Alexander Isak, Rob, we've talked about him and the level he can take them to. It was a beautiful finish from a ball with Callum Wilson. It was interesting, Rob, because Wilson came on as a substitute, didn't he? And he had both players on the pitch. And I just wonder, somewhere down the future, does it always have to be one or other? Will there be times? Could there be times when they could play together as a front two?
Yeah, I think there is, Rob. Basically, because of the way that Isak plays, he's so talented. He could play in different spots. He could play as a 10. He could play as a wide forward, one of those guys. I think Wilson's very much a number 9 and nothing else, but an effective number 9 that can go on scoring runs. We've seen that before. But no, at certain moments, I mean, again, another come from behind victory for Newcastle. I mean, this has happened many, many times now with the spirit at the football club. And what they're doing is I know Spurs got the victory, but I still feel that they're pulling away a little bit. They're running out of games now. I think nearly 29 games played for Newcastle, 30 for Spurs. I think that this run, this momentum over recent weeks is going to carry them to a top 4 finish. I believe that. And it, whether it's United or Spurs, you've got to say right now that it's probably going to be Man United, but there's plenty of games left. I just really like what Newcastle have done. We've said it many times, the way that they play. It's like no other team. They play like no other team. And Arsenal got to go there, Rob, haven't they? When Arsenal go in there?
Yeah, a few weeks' time,
Yeah, which actually I think is May. It's early May. I think they Arsenal go to Newcastle. I mean, what a difficult game that's going to be for Arsenal. But just with the energy that Newcastle managed.
That's as difficult as going to Liverpool. I just saw
highlights of this one.
Newcastle away now is difficult as going to Anfield.
Yeah, and that could be a defining game. Yeah, that really could be. But I didn't see all of this one because there's in that window of a million games going on this Saturday, but you look at them 1-0 down. I'm like, and then I look. I mean, they got goals real quick, and I'm like, wow, they're 2-1 up again. So no, they keep going. The Geordie boys, they're flying, and they're flying. I think they're going to. They keep going. They're going to finish in the top 4, which is remarkable.
Let's have a look at a few other results, mate, just before we wrap things up. The headlines were Frank Lampard back in caretaker charge of Chelsea. They were going away to Wolves. Everybody expecting, well, certainly is there going to be a caretaker bounce, if not a manager bounce, from Frank going into a dressing room of talented young players, but we know struggled to score goals, haven't quite worked out the system. He did change things a little bit, Rob. He went back to his traditional sort of 4-3-3 with Chilwell and James as full-backs, Fofana and Koulibaly as centre-backs. Then he had Enzo, Kovacic and Gallagher either side, and then a front three with Sterling one side, Felix the other, and Havertz generally at the top of the pitch. But different manager, same old Chelsea to a certain degree, Rob. Not much happening in the attacking third of the pitch. Wolves were the better team. Wolves scored a beautiful goal. I think it was Nunez who scored a half volley that smashed past Kepa. And little really reaction, Rob. Aubameyang did come on. He was in the squad. Pulisic came on, had some minutes. I mean, I'm sure he's gearing up. There was no N'Golo Kante. I'm sure that's because of the Real Madrid game coming up, which is going to be huge for Chelsea. But a bit flat, Rob, really. It was a bit flat for Frank.
Yeah, and just quickly on Frank, Rob, because I haven't chatted about what I feel about that. I was out this weekend because I was not on this weekend, and people asked me, well, "This is crazy about Frank going back there." And I said to a couple of Chelsea fans, I said, "Well, actually, is it that crazy given the circumstances, given the situation that the guy that's there already, Bruno Solskjaer, that is a rookie coach. He's a rookie coach, so he's understandably they feel like he can't take it forward." Obviously, we know they've had conversations with these top managers, Chelsea, and, the likes of Enrique and Nagelsmann and Pochettino maybe, that are probably going to hold out potentially for the Real Madrid job in the summer. Yeah. It then quickly becomes apparent that Chelsea, well, you know what, we're not going to jump into anything. The people that we want aren't really committing right now. We'll do that in the summer, so we need somebody to take over in the interim. There's nothing to play for in the Premier League. They're not going to get into any European competition. Of course, there's just the Champions League. And why don't we bring back somebody that may reconnect with the fans? He's a legend of the football club. He knows everybody here. A lot of the players are still there. It's only going to be a short-term appointment. It kind of makes sense like that. Of course, it's super weird to rehire the guy that was fired. Yeah. But when you think about the circumstance, they're not going to hire somebody. They felt like with Potter, it wasn't going anywhere, though you could absolutely argue, well, why just carry on with him? You could have argued that, but they feel that a new direction is needed straight away. So I'm like, I think you said, Rob, not that it's a masterstroke, because it's not, but it's like, it's not a ridiculous decision to bring him back, given the whole bigger picture. And it's just a short-term thing that might spark something. We saw Di Matteo with Chelsea in the Champions League, and remarkable. I was actually in the stadium. I witnessed it. I did the game. I did commentary for the game. That's quickly on that, Rob. Just on the players, Rob. You said a young, talented squad, and I'm gonna quickly mention this again. Is it a really talented squad, Rob? And that's got to be the main concern of this ownership and the club.
I would say if I line those just before you start, because I know you want to go through them. Right. If I line that squad up against the Brighton squad, Chelsea squad every day of the week are better. I'm not saying how they're playing. I'm just saying the quality of the player in the squad is way better at Chelsea than it is at Brighton, and it's a bad indictment on Chelsea, the position of the two clubs. But that's how I would frame it. So you all right? I'm just gonna talk about. I'm gonna go through the players that have come in from the summer to this season, Rob. Okay, Enzo Fernandez, 120 million euros. Yeah, good player. Yeah, good player. Right, he's a good player. Yeah. Malo Gusto, haven't seen him. Yeah. I think, has he gone back on loan? I think he's gone somewhere.
Madueke. Madueke from PSV, 35 million. Yeah. That flashes. Looks all right. Doesn't look anything special right now. Again, these are super young, and I'm not trying to be really critical here, but I'm just Mikhailo Mudryk. I think we know big fee. Yeah. Flashes. Doesn't look ready to be effective at Chelsea. I mean, and by the way, I'm assuming these are some of the most talented. This is like a club that wants to be the best team in European football. Felix, skillful, clever, but only on loan. Andre Santos, Vasco da Gama, we haven't seen much of him. Badia Shields, another good example. Yeah. Rob, looks all right. Yeah. Looks all right. Looks a decent centre-back in the Premier League. Dacho Fofana, young striker that came in from Molde. Couple of it, but we don't know. Zakaria, a midfield player. We've seen him a couple of times. I don't know. Aubameyang hasn't done anything yet. Wesley Fofana, I like. Talented player. I like him a lot. Who else have we got? Marc Cucurella. All right. Yeah, decent. Chukwuemeka, Raheem Sterling's a good player. Koulibaly's, I think he's 31 now. You got Thiago Silva, that's 38. You've got Azpilicueta, that's 32. I don't know whether this squad is that good. after spending 700 million, was it pounds, I think? Or and listen, of course, with a different manager and with more time, maybe. So I don't know, mate.
I think it's what we're talking about. Are they Premier League ready now? No. Could they be Premier League ready?
Premier League. These have got to be top Premier League players.
Yeah, but listen, we've all said it takes a while, sometimes different languages, coming and settling in, being in London, all those things, Rob. You also forget, you're not putting in the Reece Jameses, the Mason Mounts players who are in there, who are part of the squad already. I'm not just saying...
Already there.
I know, but they are still part of, the range of players that's available to whoever's in charge. This is still a good job, Rob. This is why Nagelsmann and Enrique and Pochettino and all the rest, they would be in for this job if and when it comes available. I totally hear what you're saying. You're buying a lot of it as on potential, and we don't know. Not all potential can come. Maybe 50% comes good, which would be a reasonable number. So 50% isn't, and you've got to sell it on, you've got to loan on, but some of the buying and some of the recruitment has not been fine. But I would still say, with the right manager, with the right system, given the time, this football club should be producing a lot better football than we're seeing.
Of course. Yeah, of course. But, I mean, we'll see. And Frank will be there. Of course, the Champions League's upcoming. It'll be amazing to watch them.
That's it, innit? Champions League this week. They've got to give themselves a chance in the second leg of that one against Real Madrid. Yeah. Let's move on to Leicester City and Bournemouth, my friend, because this was one of the big relegation six-pointers down at the bottom of the league. Leicester City, without a manager, Adams, Sadler, is it, and Mike Stowell in charge, were caretakers. But we're hearing all the news, Rob, and probably in the next 24 hours or so, well, we were hearing that Jesse Marsh was being lined up for the job. And then, I don't know if you heard, our insider David Ornstein came on the show earlier today and said, Leicester might just be a little bit undecided about that move now and are thinking about maybe, not going that way. Apparently, and again, I'll say it as I heard it, that not all the fans are best pleased. That where the one or two in the dressing rooms have not been best pleased, and a few people out in social media have said things that maybe the owners have thought, are we rushing into this? Should we take our time? So I'm not sure how that one's going to play out, but a Leicester City team, Rob, in serious trouble. A 1-0 defeat at home to Bournemouth. Bournemouth team that are in trouble themselves. Have got no major stars, but Gary O'Neill's done a brilliant job at just keeping them bubbling and going. How do you see things for Leicester? Are Bournemouth good enough? What I see at Bournemouth every now and then, Rob, is a win. They've got a win in them. Every now and then there's a win. If you can do that enough times, you might just get yourselves out of trouble.
Well, I think they've won 3 of the last 5 games, Rob, looking at my table here. They've won 3 of the last 5 games. That's brilliant for Bournemouth. Yeah. You keep going that, they're going to be absolutely fine, which will be fantastic given the squad that they've got, and everybody expected them to be relegated. We know the owner put a little bit of money in January, bought some players. Gary O'Neill, I like what he's doing there. It's a great win. And I'm going to quickly switch on to my underappreciated performer, Rob. And I've thought about this guy many times. And it's Philip Billing of Bournemouth. Philip Billing. Yeah. Now, I know he scored the goal, but in general, he got a ton of goals last year. By the way, he's a midfield player. He's a central midfield player that does play a little higher up in a 10 position sometimes. But I think he's a little underappreciated of how effective he is. I think that's his 7th Premier League goal
Premier League
from
goal,
a midfield player.
Club high.
Right. Yeah, and now for a midfield player in a team that's a bit of a struggler and one of the lowest scorers in the Premier League, I think it's a pretty good number. I know he got a ton of goals last year in the Championship, but a guy that's played in the Premier League before, he was a steady Eddie number 6, if you like, really. He's big, he can do a little bit of everything, but his ability to get forward and score goals has been really, really effective in last season and now going into the Premier League. 7 goals for Philip Billing in the Premier League on that side is really, really good. So just a tip of the cap to a player that's I don't say he's a journeyman, but he's been around a little bit. He's been in the Premier League before with them, but he does good work. He does good work, and that 7 goals is a good number. So I'm giving him my underappreciated performer, Philip Billing.
Good shout, Rob, because it's not always about big stars or big transfer fees and whatever. I remember him when he was at Hull. Was it Hull, wasn't he? He came up first time. We saw him in the Premier League. Was it Hull or Huddersfield? Huddersfield, one of the two. And then he came on, he moved to Bournemouth and scored there. And it was interesting. I was listening to Gary O'Neill's press conference this week, and one of the press was talking about, where do you see Philip Billing playing in your team? And he said, do you know what? I wish I had two Philip Billings. One who can play as a 6 because he does such a good job at 6, and one who can play as a 10 because he can get me goals. And that, when a manager says that just shows the kind of credit he owes. So, yeah, really good shout, Philip Billing. One of those players who's not going to win any Player of the Year awards or Player of the Month awards, but does a really good job and an important player for Bournemouth if they're going to get out of things. Okay, my friend, we're going to move it to Villa Park and Aston Villa. 2-0 winners against Nottingham Forest. Again, another game with relegation implications, certainly for Nottingham Forest. Aston Villa under Unai Emery, mate, are just absolutely flying at the moment. Traore and Ollie Watkins with the goals. Another tip of the hat to Unai, really, in terms of structure, in terms of setting his team up, look way more productive, Rob, and way more dangerous against a Forest team who are just going to have to be careful, Rob. And this week, Steve Cooper got the vote of confidence from his owner. We talked about it on the show today, and I just said, I'm not convinced Steve Cooper will be there by the end of the season if things continue in this vein. I still think they might make a change, Rob. I think they were so long out of the Premier League. If he has to take a gamble and he sees people like Roy Hodgson coming in and Sean Dyche's doing a job and people like, I just wonder if I don't know, 6 games to go, he thinks I've got to roll the dice.
Yeah, I don't think he will. That's just my gut feeling, Rob. I don't think he will. I saw something. They put a statement out. They said it's ridiculous. We keep hearing things about our manager. So I'd be really surprised. I mean, a new guy going in there, Rob, with that big squad, trying to figure out a good team. I mean, he knows them better than anybody else. I think they've come this far. He's shown that he can get promoted. He did last year. So it would.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I would still be surprised.
You would be. I'm actually going to throw your name as well. By the way, here's a name for you.
What?
Roy Keane. Boom. Roy Keane returns. Why not chuck him in and let's see what happens? Let's see what happens for 6 games. Roy Keane goes back to Forest and saves.
I'll tell you what, I love that. Absolutely love it.
Incredible,
we
wouldn't
need
it?
a bit more. We need a bit more Roy Keane. Yeah, we need more Roy Keane in our lives and in our Premier League. He's an absolute I mean, I know he's looking to get back in, isn't he?
I'm just.
I'll tell you what.
It's not the worst shout in the world, is it? Let Roy Keane amongst them. We'll see something. Listen, before we move on this one, I want to get my underappreciated performer of the week out, and it's a certain centre forward for Aston Villa. Ollie Watkins, my friend, has turned into a regular, consistent Premier League performer. Now, Watkins, somebody I knew. A few of my friends were in London and tell me Brentford have got a striker back, talking 4 or 5 years ago, who's one of them who can make the step up. He came from Brentford to Villa, I think, with Dean Smith, your ex-mate, who brought him in. And his 3 seasons in the Premier League, Rob, I've looked at his numbers. 2021, he got 14 goals. 21-22, he got 11 goals. This season, he's on 12 goals already. He's had a run of games where I think it's 6 on the bounce. Away from home, he scored goals. He's a threat. The team's better set up for him. He still runs aside and still does his hard work. He's good to start the press from the front of the pitch. He's one of those, Rob, who it's not been easy. Started his career lower down at Exeter City and went to Brentford and had to learn his trade. But I just think he's one of those that, how hard it is in the Premier League to find a goal scorer. That's Chelsea. And Aston Villa have got one who consistently now is getting around the 10, 12, 15 goals a season. Ollie Watkins is my underappreciated performer of the week.
You know what's funny about that, Rob, is that I feel like a year ago, or even a little longer, he looked really. He burst onto the scene at Villa, scoring the goals. He was involved in England, I believe. I remember thinking he should go to the World Cup or something. Yeah. Right. And then he dropped off, didn't he? Was it the beginning? Maybe under Steven Gerrard? He really he struggled.
He wasn't playing every week.
He
was on the bench. He was on the bench sometimes. He wasn't even starting.
Yeah. And I'm like, maybe he's not all that, and he's come back again. So it's a good shout. He was appreciated. Then he went off a little bit and got underappreciated. And actually, there's a good player in there, and he's showing it now under the tactical smarts of a guy that's really detail orientated. We know he's got a little bit of an unusual system, which I enjoy watching him play. And it's a good shout. Yeah, it's a good shout. It's, Ollie Watkins getting the goals. Aston Villa is a great story. I got a few friends that are Villa fans, and they're buzzing at the moment with this guy. They were buzzing when they got him in. And it's such a good fit. It's such a good fit. And the manager with the club is such an important part of how good of natural fit is it. And it just felt... I mean, to Arsenal, wow, that you didn't quite feel. But this club's size for Unai Emery is when he's done his best work with some of your Spanish teams that are not quite the big boys, but just underneath it. And wow, sixth in the Premier League now is brilliant. So good shout. Yeah. We've got a couple of games left, my friend.
Yeah, a couple of games left. Let's talk about the one today. Leeds won, Crystal Palace 5. Robbie Mustoe 5 goals for Crystal Palace. 31 shots last week, 2 goals against Leicester. 5 goals, I think 16 shots, 8 on target, 5 goals at Crystal Palace. Roy is the man, my friend. Yep,
he's the man. Wow, I think most people were like shocked at him coming back out of retirement to take the job, but what a job he's done. And I know, Rebecca's very keen on Palace and talking about Palace and stuff, and she was sort of really excited about him coming back and saying, like, after the first game where he won, like, this is justified. And I said, it's just old fire a little bit. I mean, that's a great kind of starting point, and they're scoring and they're shooting on target and stuff like that. But it's another one. There's another one. And Eberechi Eze, Rob, is the difference here. Eberechi Eze wasn't being played. He must have fallen out with the manager. Something must have gone on. New manager comes in. Eze plays and looks $1 million. Scores again today. Elise looks great. They look a totally different side. Yeah, they look a totally different side. So it was a very smart move in the end. And I don't mind holding my hands up saying, like, what are you doing? Firing Patrick Vieira and all the change is going to have to happen on a permanent nature in the summer to bring Roy Hodgson back in. Well, when you're worried about the relegation part of it, I get the changes. I still believe that they would have stayed up under Vieira, but I can't come on here and say that it was a mistake now given the success he's had. So well done, Roy Hodgson, and a total collapse from Leeds United, Rob, and just on them real quick. And it's not changed for me. No. Gracia's done a good job at Leeds in terms of being that calming influence a little bit. But the facts of this, defensively, as individuals, they're not Premier League level. No. And we all like some of the football from Luke Ayling. Yeah. Luke Ayling is good going forward, and he's one of them players that looks like he gives everything.
Yeah, you love him.
He makes mistakes at right back for goals, and it's happened on many weeks now. Again this time, you add in that Robin Koch and whoever's playing back there and Strout that again are decent players, but the way that Leeds, I love watching Leeds going forward, and some of the recruitment and some of these young players, Crescencio, Somerville, Gnotto, Aronson, they've made some good signings in terms of the attacking players, but defensively they never really strengthened well enough back there, and I think that's what's still keeping them in the hole, and the defensive ability of the back four. That's what I think. Yeah, I'd agree, and they're going to have to sort things out, otherwise they're still going to find themselves right in trouble all the way through to the end of the season. The one sort of thing for them going in their favours, Rob, is that they can get goals. I think there is goals in the team, but unfortunately, they can't stop them going in at the other end, and that's sometimes just as important. Last game, Fulham 0, West Ham 1. It was Fulham with Marco Silva up in the stands for his touchline ban against the West Ham team, which, if we believe everything that was in the papers, that it was David Moyes' last hurrah if he lost this game, or certainly fourth time was last hurrah, and fourth time is fourth time. I think he mentioned it in his presser, like every time you keep saying that, we win. It was courtesy of a Harrison Reid own goal, but it doesn't matter how they go in. They went in. They had a couple of chances second half. Ings particularly went through and maybe could have done a bit better. But anyway, one was enough. They get the points, Rob. David Moyes breathes another sigh of relief and maybe puts 2 fingers up to the rest of the press and says he's here. And I really wish this would stop, the David Moyes every time his job's on the line. The guy knows what he's doing. The guy, listen, the football isn't the greatest. Let's get to the end of the season. Let's have a chat about things. But you've got no better guy to keep you in the league. And a 1-0 win was important, an important 3 points that just takes a bit of pressure off. Yeah, I think so, mate. And that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? I mean, I think when you look at West Ham now, they're on 30 points. They're still because the third bottom club Forest is on 27, Rob, they're still right in it.
Yeah.
They're still right in it. I think the one team over the last couple of weeks, because it's back-to-back victories for Crystal Palace on 33 points.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can start to see
there,
it, can't you?
Almost there. Yeah. Other than that, the Wolves down is still absolutely going to be in it. It's amazing now. I love watching. I got a league table ahead of me. 30 games played, mate. 30 games to 38. We're in the final running. Yeah.
And as ever, mate, it was a dramatic weekend of Premier League football. In the big one, Arsenal had to be content with a point when they would have wanted all three. It's no fun for Frank as he comes back to Chelsea. They lose at Wolves. And at the bottom, Leicester lose again. Palace put 5 past Leeds, and Roy shows that he's the man. We'll be back on Thursday. That's April the 13th. So Thursday, April the 13th, we'll look back at some big midweek games in Europe. The Champions League and the Europa League, where Bayern Munich come to Manchester City, Real Madrid take Chelsea, and Manchester United take on Sevilla. But for now, I'm Earl. He's Musty, together with the two Robbies. Thanks for watching and listening. Be safe, stay healthy. I hope you enjoyed your weekend of Premier League football. It's good night from me.
And it's good night from him. Good night.
Good night.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe, studio host for NBC's coverage of the Premier League. Don't forget to hit subscribe to watch more videos all season long. For even more Premier League content, from original series to live matches, head over to Peacock and be sure to tune in for Premier League mornings every weekend on USA Network and on Peacock. We will see you over there.